Seated at the last seat of the bus, I saw how suddenly an oncoming vehicle on high speed swerved off its lane and was heading towards us. I watched as our driver quickly swerved out of our lane to the other lane to avoid a collision. But just as our bus was moving into the other lane, the oncoming vehicle returned to its original lane and there was a big bang. It felt like something had broken around the right side of my neck. So I used my right hand to support that part of my neck while I struggled to pull my leg out of the place where it was trapped. As I sat in that place and the adrenaline began to wear off, I started to feel the intensity of the pain in my neck and realized I had serious pains in my chest too. I want to thank God for a neck. I didn't know how important a neck was before the accident. Truly, all flesh is grass. Then there will come a day where you will stand before your maker, the one who has given you this life. So I kept thinking, what if I had died after that accident and I appeared before my maker? I am here to thank God for delivering me and others who were involved in the accident on the 17th of November. On the morning of Sunday, the 17th of November 2024, I was part of 22 people from this church who were in a bus heading to Eket for an evangelism outreach in a secondary school. While on our way there, we were involved in a road traffic accident, a head-on collision with another vehicle. How it happened. Few minutes before the accident occurred, I and the person seated beside me had just finished singing and reciting the memory verse 2 Corinthians 4 verse 16 to 18, which reads, "So we do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal." Now we were tuned into the meeting for that day, and that was the memory verse that was being taught, and we sang along and recited. Little did we know that the memory verse was bracing us for the impact that was going to hit us just a few minutes later. Seated at the last seat of the bus, I saw how suddenly an oncoming vehicle on high speed swerved off its lane and was heading towards us. I watched as our driver quickly swerved out of our lane to the other lane to avoid a collision. But just as our bus was moving into the other lane, the oncoming vehicle returned to its original lane and there was a big bang, followed by sounds of shattering glass, metals, and screams of Jesus, Jesus everywhere. The two cars stopped abruptly as soon as the collision happened, and people standing by the roadside began to run towards the two vehicles involved in the accident. The back door of our bus was quickly opened by the passers-by, and we were asked to come down quickly. There were shouts of "fuel is pouring" from the people outside, and that made my brethren inside the bus who could move to jump out through whatever opening they could find, be it a door or a window. When you hear that fuel is pouring, the fear of an explosion happening was real. While all of this was going on, I couldn't move, as one of my legs was trapped inside a spare tire that was in the bus. My inability to jump out through the back door was further worsened by the sharp throbbing pain that was racing from the base of my neck straight to my head. It felt like something had broken around the right side of my neck. So I used my right hand to support that part of my neck while I struggled to pull my leg out of the place where it was trapped. One of the brethren inside the bus saw me struggling and helped to pull out my leg from that spare tire, and we were both able to jump out of the bus through its back door. After I jumped out of the bus, I was dazed for a couple of seconds, trying to understand what had just happened. I stood there at the back of the bus with my hand holding my neck, and all I could say was "Jesus" repeatedly. At that moment, I realized some people still needed to be carried out of the bus, as some of them could not move. With a lot of adrenaline pumping at that moment, I forgot the pain in my neck and joined to help in carrying away from the bus some of our brethren who could not walk. The scene was chaotic as frantic efforts were made to move the injured away from the badly damaged cars and to break the door to the driver's seat, where the brother that was driving our bus, Brother Michael, was trapped between the steering and the driver's seat. By now, some cars had stopped at the scene of the accident, and some of the drivers of those cars were being begged to carry the seriously injured ones to the nearest hospital. Shouts, cries, prayers, and tongues of all types and ranges filled the air. One very dramatic sister was running around without shoes and with her hands on her head, shouting, "Brother Michael, oh, Brother Michael." help from strangers in moving us to the hospital. I didn't know when I began to shout at one of the drivers who had offered his car to carry our critically injured brethren to the hospital. I was yelling at him and the other drivers because I didn't understand why they were taking so long to start moving. Why was I shouting? One of our brothers, Brother Samuel Morris, was unconscious, limp, and looked almost lifeless, with blood coming out of his nose. I didn't understand why they were delaying, to be honest, but then it wasn't my car, it was their car, so we had to still wait for them to... and later I understood that they were trying to get all the injured persons as much as they could carry before moving, but at the moment, it really felt like they were wasting time. After what took about 25 minutes, the critical cases were put into the cars and were moved to the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital. Shortly after we arrived at the accident and emergency unit of the hospital, Pastor arrived there too. He was moving from one person to another, assessing the level of injury, asking where they feel pains, and laying hands on those places, while also assisting to lift and wheel some of them into the accident and emergency ward. Thank God for our pastor. Although I was feeling pains in my neck, it didn't seem like it was something serious, as I also joined in carrying our critically wounded brethren down from the cars, wheeling some on stretchers and pushing others on wheelchairs into the A&E ward. I remember Sister Marachi, who was standing by Pastor, asking me if I had any injuries, and I said no, just a little pain around my neck. When I said that, Pastor immediately laid his hands on my neck and muttered a prayer. When all of our brethren had been moved into the A&E ward and were being attended to, I found a place in the ward and sat down. This was about 12 noon, I think. As I sat in that place and the adrenaline began to wear off, I started to feel the intensity of the pain in my neck and realized I had serious pains in my chest too. So I think I had hit my chest on the seat in front of me. What I had earlier described as just some little pains in my neck to Sister Marachi began to feel like some heavy weight was attached to my neck, making it heavier as the minutes went by. My neck kept feeling heavier until it seemed as though it could no longer carry my head. I desperately needed to lie down and get the weight of my head off of my neck. But there was no empty bed in the A&E ward as it was filled, so I had to go and lie down inside Pastor's car. At that point, my neck had become painfully stiff. I couldn't turn my head to the right and could only do so slightly to the left. This was accompanied by a severe headache. I lay inside Pastor's car in that condition until late in the evening when it was my turn to do an x-ray. When it was time to do an x-ray, just raising my chin to give the radiographers a better view of my neck made me scream like a woman because of the pain that came from just trying to lift my head and stretch my neck a bit. It really felt like my neck could no longer carry my head. I remember one of our brothers in the music team was there and was throwing jabs at me about how if I was told to sing in those high pitches, I would say no, I can't sing like that. But at that moment, I was screaming in very high pitches. It was already night when my x-ray result was brought to the doctors at the A&E ward. The doctor attending to us looked at my x-ray and said it appears the bone in my neck has shifted out of its place. But he added that he would wait for his superior's diagnosis by the next morning when his superior comes to work. In the meantime, a soft neck collar was given to me immediately to support my neck. I was also given an injection and some pain medications. By the next morning, a consultant neurosurgeon came with his team of doctors for a ward round and my x-ray results were shown to him. He pointed at a spot on my x-ray film and said, "There is a fracture here, a C7 fracture." Upon hearing this, I said a short prayer in my heart, "God, I beg." He went further to examine me and requested that a CT scan be conducted for my neck to ascertain the level of damage caused by the accident. I was asked to change the soft neck collar to a rigid one, which was the appropriate thing in such circumstances. About 3 days later, a CT scan was conducted and the results came out. And the results came out normal. There was no C7 fracture as earlier suspected or any other fracture revealed. It was later explained to me that some muscle had been strained and shifted out of place, and it will take a while for that and other tissue that were damaged around my neck to completely heal. They were throwing big words around like atlantoaxial muscle and stuff like that. Hence the need for me to keep wearing the rigid neck collar for at least a certain number of weeks. Now, after the CT scan, I had things were so bad, or from the period of the X-ray, first X-ray and the CT scan, I couldn't, if I lay down, I couldn't get up by myself. I would have to be supported. A hand would have to be put under my neck to lift me up from the bed, and then lying down, I would have to lie down very slowly. Just movement, anything that involved movement was a bit difficult, especially to have to turn. I'm very grateful to God for the following: protecting me and my brethren on the morning of the accident from death. It could have been worse than that, but God stepped in and said, "Thus far and no more." Now, if you've seen pictures or videos from that accident, you will know that it could have really been worse than that. The front of the bus was badly damaged. People who came around, for even us believers and Christians that were there, to be honest, some of us had started crying for Brother Michael when we saw the efforts that were being put in to break open the front. And you would just think that it's either of two things: a dead person being brought out or a severely damaged person. But I mean, he's seated there today. Praise God. I want to thank God also for preventing what could have resulted in a spinal injury for me. At the hospital, I was told stories of people who had similar cases as mine that resulted in them being paralyzed or having to undergo a spinal surgery to correct ruptures and damage to tissues. When the neurosurgeon was examining me, they kept asking if I was feeling numb in my hands, because there was the fear that if some tissue got damaged around that area, that the nerves that were sending maybe signals to my arms and so would be destroyed, and as such that might lead to some form of paralysis. But I thank God that none of that has happened, and I'm moving my limbs. I'm very fine. I was told by the neurosurgeon on my recent visit to the hospital last Tuesday that a spinal surgery currently costs 8 million naira. So if that has happened, I don't know. I just thank God for his intervention. I want to thank God also for speedy recovery. I had to be on bed rest for some days and could not sit up for long because of the pains in my neck and shoulder. But by the second week after the accident, I could sit up for a couple of hours and even threw out a tarry meeting by the third week. I want to thank God for a neck. I didn't know how important a neck was before the accident. But after the accident, I really saw how important a neck is. And I thank God for a neck that can turn. I no longer have to move my entire body when I need to turn in a certain direction. My brethren in Bethel House were throwing jabs at me that I was moving like a robot. If I need to turn to a direction, I'll have to do something like this. And it was just, but then today I can turn my neck. I give God all the glory. I thank God for provision through pastor for the medical bills. The cost of the CT scan alone left me thinking really far. A lot of money was spent, and I thank God for provision through pastor. I want to thank God for the blessing of a church family. My biological family is not here. They're in far away Taraba, and there was all of the concerns. How are you being taken care of? And I just laughed. If you know the village I have here, I have a whole community, and I thank God for that blessing, the care I received, and I'm still receiving through my recovery process. I'm very grateful for that. I thank God for the lessons reinforced in my heart while I lay on my sickbed and pondered on the brevity of life. Truly, all flesh is grass. Because I kept thinking about how in a twinkle of an eye, it happened. One moment we were inside the car, I heard some people were even taking selfies before the accident. And so there were pictures of before and after. So it was just amazing how one moment you are all tush and fine. I was wearing this dress on that day. And the next moment, it could be something else. So I thank God for the lessons. One of the lessons for me was that there will come a day, truly, it got reinforced strongly, that there will come a day where you will stand before your maker, the one who has given you this life. So I kept thinking, what if I had died after that accident and I appeared before my maker? I just made up my mind after the accident to use my life for the one who gave me the life, because truly all flesh is grass, life is very brief, and one day, no matter how strong-headed you are, you will have to stand before the one who has given you the life. So for all these and more, I've come to say thank you, Jesus, for your deliverance and for your salvation.
Thanks for watching. For more stories of God's transforming power, as well as all the life-changing content, do check out the links in the description. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, turn on your notification bell, and share. God bless you.